Hi there, welcome back to another video. This is part 2 of my big take back the psychology of recovery videos. Hope you enjoyed part 1. If you haven't watched it, go look at it now. The link is somewhere on the screen or somewhere on my channel. Go find it. You're an adult, you'll work that out. I want to talk firstly today about where we are right now in terms of recovery and this third lockdown and consumer sentiment. It's kind of like, imagine you were training for a marathon, right? I don't know how many of you are runners, but you've done the 6-month training, you've done the long runs, the short runs up at 7 a.m. out there pounding the streets, and you eventually got to race day. You've done the nutrition plan, you've taped up your nipples, because that's a thing, taping up your nipples while you run, and so you hit the wall. I'm sure you've all heard about the wall, this metaphorical wall that around 20-mile mark, all the glycogen in your muscles is gone. You're running on empty, but you've only got those 6 miles left to finish the marathon. And you see runners literally kind of collapse around the 20-mile mark, and they're dragging themselves through it. Some of them are even walking now or running slower, and so there's this wall that you hit. Now imagine at that point, if you hit the wall, you think, oh God, how am I going to make the last 6 miles? Come on, I'll do it. I've trained for this. I'll do it. And then someone whispered in your ear, did you not know this was an ultra marathon? This is a 40-mile road race, not 26. And you'd be there thinking, what? I didn't see that on registration. I think that's exactly how we all feel right now. In terms of coping with the pandemic as consumers, the kind of finish line was there. We saw the light at the end of the tunnel. November, we had all the really good vaccine news, and it seemed like Q1 of 2021 would solve it all. But then all the new variants flooded in, and things got worse. And so I think it's just like that. We've all hit the wall, but yet it turns out that the race is much longer than we thought, and the finish line that we had kind of seen in the horizon has disappeared like some kind of oasis in a cruel desert. And so I want to talk a little bit today about despair, because the last video we talked about hope, and hope and despair, of course, are opposites. In fact, despair comes from the French word without hope. Despair, that's what it means. In fact, espoir in French is also the word for spirit. And so without spirit, without hope, without drive, despair is such a strong force. And in fact, if you ever want to oppress someone, if you ever want to take over a country and oppress its citizens, despair is what you want to manifest. Because when people have despair, they actually just drop everything. They get to the point where they say, okay, I can't fight anymore. I can't face this anymore. And so you break them. And that's the point that oppressors, of course, want, because then you can easily manage a group of people when they're broken spirited. And that's, I think, where we are globally right now. There's a lot of despair. And with despair, of course, comes misery and anxiety and depression and fear. And these are all really bad things for consumer sentiment, really bad things for economic recovery. And so we need to look at despair and see how we can somehow manage it ourselves. We can't rely on governments, or we can't rely on pharmaceutical companies with vaccines to do this for us. We as business owners and brand owners need to actually look at the despair and able to try and counterbalance it somehow. Because despair is also a sedative. It limits people's behaviours. And in fact, there's a wonderful book, I think I have it here, I do. This is Frankl's Search for Meaning. This is a really famous book written by Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust. He was a psychotherapist. And he wrote that book after his Holocaust experiences. And he talks about despair in that a lot. He'll talk about the reality of when people realise there's no hope. There's no point in even trying. And therefore you just go about your day-to-day business, you repeat the same thing you did every day, you put the head down and you go like a zombie apocalypse. You kind of keep this moving. And we're at risk of falling into that space right now unless we cope with this as brands and businesses. And actually Frankl had a formula in his book. He talks about despair equals suffering minus meaning. This idea that if you're suffering and there's no meaning to it, then you just fall into a pit of despair. Whereas if there is some kind of meaning to your suffering, so think about the phase 1 of the lockdowns, this time last year, March last year, we would have been in our original lockdowns, and there was a lot of community spirit. There was purpose to our suffering. Okay, we're going to stay inside, but we're going to kill this virus. Great. A year later, that purpose is waning, and therefore all you're left with is suffering. So if we're going to look at suffering, we have to see what the counter side to that is. And here it is, desire. So the activation of consumer desire is really important. So if we're going to try and tackle the despair piece in our communities and in our societies, and it's particularly in our consumer spending, we need to be able to activate consumer desire, activate personal desire. And desire is one of the strongest forces that we have in the human race. There are many different types of desire. There's physical desire. So physical desire is like hunger and thirst. There's intellectual desire. Even your choice to click this video today is you satisfying some kind of intellectual curiosity, intellectual desire that you have. There's sexual desires, lust, Economic desires, that's what we're talking about today a lot. Economic desire, the consumer sentiment, consumer spending, the need to spend, the need to have material possessions, to have experiences that make you more fulfilled, and spend the money on those experiences. And so, economic desires are huge too. Now, desire, everything you do, by the way, as a human comes from desire. Every single action, every single thing you do in life comes from some kind of desire. And there's two types of desire. The first one is terminal desires. And terminal desires are a raw want that you have. You're trying to relieve some kind of suffering. So let's go back to physical desire. Hunger. It's a really good example of a terminal desire. I am hungry. I am suffering because I'm hungry and I need to relieve that suffering. That is my terminal desire. Then I go to the supermarket and I buy some ingredients like bread and ham and cheese, and I make a sandwich, and I'm doing that to relieve my terminal desire. But the desire to go to the supermarket and the desire to buy all those brands of products, that's an instrumental desire. An instrumental desire is what you do. It's a chain of actions, if you like, to satisfy your terminal desire. And so what's interesting about terminal desires, they're so powerful, they come from feelings, emotions, whereas instrumental desires tend to come from intellect. You think about them. Whereas the raw need for something is a terminal desire. And we have very strong terminal desires right now in society. People want to belong, they want to be part of community, they want to touch, they want to feel, they want to experience, they want to be on a subway and someone's sweaty armpit in their face. They don't mind that anymore. So there's these very strong pulsating terminal desires. The question for you and your brand and your business is how you can slip your product and service in as an instrumental to be able to satisfy their terminal desire. Brian Keenan, actually another book, I've packed my shelf here of books today for you to read, An Evil Cradling. This is another book I'd love you all to get. This is a book by a guy called Brian Keenan. He was held hostage in Beirut in 1986 to 1991, 4.5 years, 1,500 days. That man was held hostage by Islam terrorists, chained, naked, tortured, never knew whether he was going to live or die any day. And when he was released, he was asked by a journalist when he returned to Ireland what he was going to do now. And he said, I am going to travel to every country in the world. I'm going to eat all the food in the world. I'm going to drink all the drink in the world. And I'm going to make love to every woman in the world. Now, he subsequently got married, so he either has a very understanding wife or he never did get to get that last part. But his quote just shows the strength of desire, When you've been in captivity, he wanted it all and he wants it now. And that's what our consumers are coming out of this pandemic like. They want it all, they want it now. So your purpose is to activate desire. Your purpose is to be there for the fulfillment of their desires. We need to have our products and our brands and our services available so that the desires people have to take their lives back, for that big take back, and they want to be empowered for that take back. And desire is going to be the main thing that will drive that forward. We all have our desires. Right now, I have a desire for a haircut. Look at the state of this. Look, this is my lockdown hair after 3 months. I really wish that I had gone to the barbers back in December before they closed again. Until next time, I'm Ken Hughes. See you then.